Hello, so today I'm joined by Elaine Godley. How are you doing, Elaine?
Fabulous, thank you. Still hobbling around on crutches, but managing as we
Yes.
do as women.
So, what happened? I think you fractured your leg a few months ago. Was that correct? Or
Yeah, yeah,
before?
that's right. Yeah, with the dogs, animal lovers is all very well, but when they get excited and you're in the way, things happen. Anyway, no matter. Good job I'm healthy apart from that, and that's partly what we're going to be talking about today, isn't it?
Yes, yes. So, Elaine, you've sent me over some information about you. I've been your friend for a number of years, and I didn't know half of these things. So, this is very interesting. You're a multiple number one bestseller author and a podcast host, and you are a master health mentor who blends decades of corporate leadership with deep personal experience in health and wellness. And your journey includes surviving 4 different types of cancer, reversing a rare kidney disease, and then guiding thousands towards healthier, more balanced lives. So, welcome, Elaine. It's a pleasure to have you today. Um, so, it's saying that you're a master health mentor and you support international clients and business leaders, and you help them to prevent serious illness and disease so that both the organization and the individual can thrive naturally. So, what brought you to where you are today, Elaine? What's your background exactly?
Okay, it's a bit of a long story because I'm nearly 70 now. So I've been around the block a few times, got dizzy, and done it all again several times. So I was born with a rare kidney disease, which I didn't know about. Nobody knew about until I was about 22, when I got blue lighted to a hospital in London and met with people wearing hazmat suits, etc. They thought I had typhoid, and I was put in an isolation ward. Anyway, long story short, after many misdiagnoses in my teens, because I was a competitive swimmer and I was training twice a day in a chlorinated pool, they thought the waterwork infections or the projectile vomiting that I was susceptible to was due to the chemicals. Anyway, turns out I was born with this kidney disease that was never picked up. The kidney disease is called medullary sponge kidneys. And if you look it up today, it's still rare and it's still considered incurable. Anyway, I got this diagnosis eventually after lots of prodding and poking, and I was put on medication. I was put on antibiotics, and I remained there for 23 years till my mid 40s. And I was on a 3-week rotating cycle because one just wasn't right. Your body gets used to medication. So I was taking one for a week, then a different medication for the next week, third week, then I'd start again week one. This went on for 23 years. When I had my daughter, I was in hospital for 10 weeks because of the regulating the medication with her and so on and so forth. Anyway, in my 40s, I was introduced to a chiropractor, and I was born again with a twisted and a curved spine. And it doesn't cause me many problems, but over the years I've been hospitalized with it and on traction and all sorts of things. These days, it doesn't cause me any problem at all. I know how to deal with it through all the training that I've had. So when I met the chiropractor who worked on my spine, the area that was most problematic was my kidneys and my bladder area, the spinal part at the bottom. His girlfriend was a nutritionist, and she introduced me to hair analysis, which I use today with clients. So he worked on my spine, did the manipulation, sorted that out. She worked on my diet and lifestyle guidance stuff. And between the two of them, I had the confidence to come off of the antibiotics, which I'd been on for over 20 years. Within 18 months, my kidney function was better than the average person and still remains that way. So during that period, which is many years ago now, I then trained as a nutritionist, did et cetera, before the days of internet. And now I'm really excited because the people I do the hair analysis with, they've now created a really in-depth training program that I'm going through. So I'm learning a deeper understanding of the mineral imbalances in our body. The cancers that came along the way, a lot of that was due to stress. It was also induced by the medication I was on. There's no one answer to anything, but I'm on a mission to help people understand how their behavior affects their health, which is a slightly different topic that we'll touch on. But with the mineral analysis, through just taking a little bit of hair from the back of the head, you send it to a laboratory. So you do this yourself at home. You don't need to go to doctors or consult with me even. You send it to the laboratory. I receive a report and I help you to understand what's going on in your body. And you receive a report, you receive different variations of the report. So that's kind of very quick snapshot on how I've got into this topic.
So before we go into the hair analysis, what happened was you had all these experiences in your own health, and you'd also been working in the corporate world for some time with different leaders and institutions. And what you're saying on your profile here is that you started to become a specialist in something called DISC model of behavior profiling. So how did you get into that, and what does that all mean essentially?
Okay, so the DISC model is one of many, many models that are around today, and you only need to do a quick search on whatever platform you use these days. And if you put in DISC, DISC behavior profiling, and you come up with literally millions of hits. It actually goes back to the days of Hippocrates, and Hippocrates was a doctor in around 400 BC in Greece, and he was considered the father of medicine. And he was the one who identified different behavior characteristics. And back in those days, it was to do with the bodily fluids, the colour of our bodily fluids, which is why some of the behavioural types now are coloured types. People will say, oh, you were blue, red, or green, yellow, whatever. So there's 4 key colours. So his work got translated over the years into various different types of behavior profiling. And I use the DISC model, which is the very kind of first, if you like. And the fact that I've had all these health issues, I've linked the two now. So I can tell by looking at somebody's behavior pattern. And when I say pattern, I have a system where people can input their there's a series of 24 statements. So you say which is most like you, which is least like you. Do that 24 times, only takes about 10 minutes. That then generates a report of about 20 pages, and it tells you all about yourself. And it shows a series of graphs which shows what your natural behavior style is, what your current work or your kind of public persona is, and the difference between the two. That's where the health challenges come. So I've taken the DISC model and extended it further with my own system and linked it with the health because of my own personal experience and training. And I find that it amuses me because Hippocrates was a doctor. I've kind of brought it up into the modern day world. So it's how our behaviours affect us in life. Some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. All of that has an impact on our well-being.
So you're saying that the behaviors that we display perhaps in our personal lives when we're at home and we're relaxed, and the behaviors that we might present as at work, that there's often a difference between the two. And it's that gap between the two that can create an imbalance, which can then reflect in our health later on. Is that what you're saying?
Completely. Yeah, completely.
And so you take this profile of, you take this test, I suppose you might want to say, where there's 24 questions, and that helps to identify where you might have an imbalance between the two aspects of your life. And then once you get that result, what happens then, Elaine? You can create a profile of that person's healing on just an emotional level, or is that all levels, spiritual, emotional, physical. How does that show you what levels and where the healing needs to take place?
Okay, so it's all about the story behind. So the disc profile itself and the report is one aspect. It's a key aspect, but it gives us an indication of whether the person is in alignment with their true self or not. And as you rightly said, if there's a difference between the two, internal and external patterns, that's an indicator that something needs investigating. So typically, coaches will use DISC as part and parcel of their toolkit, shall we say. And a lot of them use it just in corporate for recruitment. Are you in the right role? Are you doing the right things in your role? Are you in the right part of the business? That kind of thing. So inherently, it's been used only in corporate. Um, I've extended it to the health because I've identified that if somebody is not in alignment with their true selves, whether that's spiritual, emotional, physical, whatever, it shows up in the disc behavior pattern. So it's then a question of finding out, digging deeper, having a conversation with a client to find out, well, what's going on here? Are you aware of this? A lot of people aren't even aware. They've got so used to being behaving in a certain way when they're in the public. When they go home, they can keep it together when they're out in the public, whether that's work or school or, just whatever they're doing. They come home and they're exhausted. They're absolutely whacked out because they're trying to be somebody they're not. And as I say, some people don't even realize they're doing it. So when they first see a behavior profile, they're quite amazed. Then you dig into the conversation. But the emotional side of things is a key aspect that gets lots of people into trouble. We hold on to trauma, we hold on to stories and so on, and the work that you do is wonderful because you help people to release all of that and to get to the root cause. So we both help people from a different perspective, but we get to the same result. And it's about the individual recognizing how their behavior is impacting their life, their work, their career, their personal relationships.
Yes, because in spiritual work, which obviously I do with the angels and meditation groups, etc., and following spiritual law, what we're aiming for is for somebody to heal to the point where they can be authentic and where they can feel peaceful with being authentic in any situation. And obviously that's a process, that's a journey. But how do you, from your point of view, what qualifies you to be able to identify those characteristics in terms of then setting out a plan for healing? Are you a psychologist or psychiatrist?
Okay, so I consider myself a business psychologist. There are very few qualifications that one can do in this field. And bearing in mind, I started all this over 30 years ago. So a lot of my experience, I was trained 25 something years ago. I started in probably early 90s looking at the behavioural side of things when I was working in corporate. And in those days, it was only linking before the internet, so we had pens, carbon paper, drawings, we worked out equations and all sorts of things. When I look back now, I think, my goodness me, I wouldn't even attempt it today. So I've been doing this over 30 years. I trained with two very good companies way back. And I've extended my own knowledge, and with the internet now, there's lots of. I'm always doing updated training. I've got a master's degree in. I've got an MBA, so corporate side of things, how the business psychology works with behaviour. And I'm also a trained nutritionist and biohacker, so I have got qualifications all around, plus my own lived experience with 4 different types of cancer, kidney disease. I've helped thousands of people over the years. I've done a lot of public speaking, written some books, and helped other people to publish books and written chapters for them and so on. So I'm not a deeply qualified person in terms of certificates and whatnot. I've got many, but
you're more of an experiential
yes,
speaker, which to all extents and purposes is actually probably a better way to go, because sometimes you can have too much theory and not enough experience. So I think that's a good thing. So if I say I did the form with you and you identified certain areas that I could improve on, what does that entail? Is that like would you encourage me to say meditate or to eat differently, or what would be certain criteria that you might address, and how might that look?
Okay, good question and a difficult one to answer because it's all of the above. It really depends on the person's core personality style. So, for example, I mentioned earlier, some people are extroverts, some people are introverts. Even that basic level will determine what the person's resting state is like. So, for example, somebody who's using the DISC mnemonic, high D is highly direct control type of person, task orientated, getting things done. You've got the I, which love to have fun, the highly inspirational people. Both are high energy. And then you've got the S and the C, with their more cerebral types, more gentle, calmer types. So those different styles, and we're a blend. We have all of those in our makeup. Some of them, most people will have two that are more prevalent than the others. However, um, relaxation, chilling, etc., for one person will be somebody else's nightmare. So the high Ds might go for a run to relax, whereas the high S's might want to curl up in the corner somewhere with a book. So
So
it really depends on the story.
so the D, I, S, and C actually stand for certain types of profile.
That's right, yes.
See. And so you can be, say, like a D in one environment and maybe an S in another. I mean, sometimes I joke that I'm an introverted extrovert because
Hmm.
actually I'm not particularly comfortable with even speaking on a screen or in front of people. And yet here I am doing videos and YouTube content. So it's a bit of an anomaly, I think. That so again, I call myself an introverted extrovert. So I don't know how that fits into the DISC profiling. So you then set up something called, was it the Health Hub? Is that where we are now, the Perfect Health Hub?
Yeah, well, that's on the screen. So the Perfect Health Hub is actually a free resource that I've
Right.
created.
Yes.
In 2015, I had stage 4 cancer and I beat it in under 4 months. And my mother made me promise that I would then share with the world how they can deal with serious illness and disease. It took me many years to work out how to do that. So she died 10 years ago, 2015. So here we are, 2025. And I launched the hub, I think it was 22. It was April 22. I launched the hub, but I've now got it into a situation where I write articles. I write a lot of health articles. Somebody says to me, "Oh, how do I fix gallstones?" or "How do I treat thyroid?" or how do I beat cancer?" Blah blah. Whatever the question is. Um, Now I've written so many articles. In fact, my articles have been viewed over 55,000 times in the last year. So I think
Mm.
I'm on to a good path. But I do it on a voluntary basis to share my knowledge, wisdom. I link with other people, collaborate with other people. But if people are wanting to join the hub, we have a membership scheme where people attend meetings. I host the Friday Health Club. They can get discount off of my services and so on, the hair analysis or the disc behavior analysis. And we're a support tribe. We support one another. There's lots of health practitioners, there's members of the public, there's doctors, nurses, various other qualified people. So there's always somebody who can answer a question, whether it's on WhatsApp or whether it's in an online meeting.
So basically, people come and join your Perfect Health Hub. They can then ask you questions about particular health concerns. And within that, they can join a membership scheme and also ask you to do this DISC profiling assessment. And I understand within that, you've just mentioned previously that there's something called a hair analysis. Now, is that
Yes.
part of the Perfect Health Hub, or is that part of the DISC profiling?
I offer, they're my two key services, basically.
Right.
So because I'm in an unusual situation because what I do is very, very odd. Most people either understand behavior profiling or they understand health. Linking the two has given me a challenge on how I present it, and I still don't know the easy answer. So I've created the hub for people who are more interested in the health side of things. I've also created the Disc Plus Academy for people who are more interested in the behavior side of things. But me myself, I link the two
Yes.
always because they do naturally go together.
Yes, it's a very unique product, which
Mm.
I think is very useful. And for me, I'm actually interested in both aspects of it and how it fits together. So if I, for instance, sent you a hair analysis, would that help you with the disc side, or would that help you with the health side?
The hair analysis is definitely strictly only on the health side.
Right.
The the behavior side, that gives an indication that there is a health problem. So, for
Okay.
example, I've just profiled a team of 12 accountants, and the managing partner asked me to look at the team to tell him, are these people in the right role doing the right things? So every individual then has a link to my site. They go onto the site, they do their profile. I get a PDF report. I then analyze this particular team, and I found that 5 out of the 12 team members are at complete burnout. They've exceeded their capability to modify their behavior. So when we look at the behavior piece, we have these internal and the external behaviors as we've discussed.
Mm.
So when there is no alignment, when the person is not being true to themselves, that has a huge impact on everything around them, themselves, their family, their work, their health, etc., etc. So we all have a capability to modify our behavior to a greater or lesser extent. And there's certain things in the profile that I just know I can tell just by looking at the behavior patterns. And this is what I teach people. I teach people how to understand and how to identify this in their own life. When there is a huge difference between the amount somebody can modify their behavior and how they are actually modifying it in that time, that's when the health flags, the red flags appear because they're not being authentic, they're not being true to themselves. They might not even know that's what they're doing, but maybe they've been doing it for such a long time, it's become their normal, but it's not healthy. And this is why you have a build-up. People, generally speaking, are older when they have health challenges because it's been a build-up of stuff they've been doing, whether they've been eating incorrectly or behaving incorrectly for many years. So I'm on a mission to get this message out there sooner rather than later. And I offer my system to schools. I mentor some students in schools in England who use the system. And when very often I identify that some of these students who are in trouble in school, they're a copy of my own behaviour. And when we can help people to get on the right track sooner rather than later in life, they don't go around making mistakes, trying to be somebody they're not. They're more grounded. They understand themselves. Their emotional intelligence becomes higher, and so on and so forth.
So it's not necessarily that people are in the wrong jobs, it's just that they might not have had any awareness to date of these patterns that you're talking about. And by catching people early at the school age level, you can point out early on where people might be having those two personalities, one for social and one for when they're in their own personal space. So we catch it early, and as you said, people then have more emotional intelligence and awareness of where potentially not bridging the gap can in the future create these health conditions. It's interesting because I used to follow the teaching of Louise Hay some years ago, who she herself had developed, I think it was a terminal cancer. And because of her spiritual connection, I think it was at that time, she was able to identify that it was the foods that she was eating and the thought processes that she was continuously looping in her subconscious mind that were then creating a health outcome. So it's interesting that what you're talking about sounds quite similar, that if we're not aware of our subconscious patterns, that it then manifests in, or appears as some kind of illness or disorder later on. So how do people make contact with you today, Elaine? Are we going to put some links below and they would come through your Perfect Health Hub? Is that the best way for people to come in?
Yes, yeah, I've got because of how I've explained, it's difficult to kind of link the two and people get confused. So I've got a website. You can get to the hub through the website. I've got my podcast interviews on there and lots of health conversations as well. It does explain a bit about the disc profiling and the health. So yes, we'll put the links. We'll put the links below. Well, you, not me. We'll put the links below,
Yeah.
and people can contact me. But I'm very happy to have conversations with people or contact me on WhatsApp, where I seem to live on WhatsApp these days.
Yes. So is there anything else that we haven't covered in this sort of brief introduction today around the topics that we've been talking about? Is there anything else you'd like to finalize with today?
Well, just to reinforce that the work you do is so important with the work I do as well, because when somebody has got a diagnosis of a serious condition, it doesn't have to be terminal, but some chronic long-term condition they've suffered with for a long time, they're on multiple medications. The root causes are always, doesn't matter what the condition is, 99.9% of the time, this is obviously I'm generalizing, but I mean it is a huge factor. The emotional instability of people, the trauma that they carry, the thought processes, as you've mentioned, and the subconscious, they're repeating patterns that are sabotaging themselves. That happens again and again. And all of the work I've done with people over the years, helping them to reverse cancers, for example, unless they have a deep spiritual belief, whatever that looks like for themselves, unless they have that and the true belief that they will heal, they don't heal. I've been to too many funerals, and that's why now I concentrate more on prevention rather than fixing things. I use the hair analysis to help people fix things because it's their information translated by the laboratory, not by me. I don't do this. It goes through laboratory. I help with the feedback, but it's a combination of everything. It's not just one thing. It's not just what you eat. It's what you think. It's how you live, who you mix with. The people around you. Are they positive? Are they negative? Do they serve you? And do you serve them? What do you do? How do you spiritually align yourself with your day-to-day environment? So it's a very interesting topic, which I'm sure we could talk about for days. But it's been lovely speaking with you today, Michelle. Thank you for the invitation.
Yes, I think it's important just to finish that you do have to have an element of belief. In angelic training, we say you have to ask, believe, and then you can receive. And it doesn't mean you necessarily have to believe in a specific God or deity. It's more about having that positive idea that if you think in a positive way, you can make positive changes in your life. And you can see that, as you said, in how your health then improves. And I would imagine that if you do a hair analysis over time, you might be able to see some of the results of that in just the results that come back from the analysis itself. I don't know. Have you found that, Elaine, if you do maybe a hair analysis with, say, 6 months apart, that they can look different based on the techniques and the information that you then give people going forward?
Yes, yeah, completely. the thought process is a huge part of it, the emotional balance, etc. But with the hair analysis, we give recommendation. The laboratory gives recommendations of what foods to have more of, what foods to have less of. Recommends supplementation in the short term. We don't believe in long-term supplementation. Everything can be achieved by food and lifestyle changes. So yes, absolutely. And for some people, it can happen as quickly as just a few weeks. Some long-term conditions they've lived with all their life within a few weeks can be fixed by the simple fact that the hair analysis is showing up where the stresses are in the body. The behavior analysis shows up where the emotional stuff is going on and their physical behaviors is happening. So that's why I love the two together. They work really, really well synergistically.
Yeah, I think you've identified something very important, very potent, and I hope that everyone after listening today will come along and see what you have to offer. It's been lovely to have you, Elaine, and maybe we'll come back and do another talk about something else in the future. But for now, take care, good healing with your ankle or your lower leg, whatever happened there. And you need to be keeping your dogs on the disc profile to see if they're an introverted extrovert so they don't knock you over again.
Yeah, they're definitely two different personality styles, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle.
Okay, Elaine, bye for now.